Cranes and bulldozers are tearing up the facade of the White House's East Wing, clearing the way for President Donald Trump's new ballroom. It's a $250 million project fully funded by private contributions and businesses and individuals. Now, these renderings give us a glimpse into what the White House will look like. The 90,000 square foot space will seat nearly 1,000 people and have bulletproof glass windows on all sides. Now, to put this into perspective, the White House itself is about 55,000 square feet. Joining us now is Jennifer Pickens, the White House and First Lady expert and author of the book, Entertaining at the White House, Decades of Presidential Traditions. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
This is such an honor and so much fun to talk to you about this because you spent so much time in the White House. First, tell us a little bit about your background.
So I've written 3 books in the White House that I've loved, focusing on the traditions of our history. I love the White House because I think it really is a metaphor for our country. So my first book, Christmas at the White House, it really is a reflection of how traditions and things have changed over time. When you think about when the average American had a Christmas tree, it was about the same time the first Christmas tree appeared at the White House with Benjamin Harrison. Then we had pets at the White House. And then this latest one, Entertaining at the White House, Decades of Presidential Traditions, was just so much fun to really dive in and look at all these traditions and see how they've evolved over time and how they really have been such a part of our integral of our history.
And there's always been this growing fascination about the White House and the details inside, from the furniture to who dined there. And this new ballroom, to put this into perspective, is almost twice the size of the entire White House. When you heard about the plans for this new addition in the East Wing, what did you think?
I will be honest, I wasn't that surprised. I felt like, okay, it's finally happening. The size is interesting. I mean, the White House is truly on a human scale, which I love. It really reflects America and how we, our leaders live. The White House is the only home really that acts as a home, an office, and a museum that's open for tours, but it is on a human scale. So when you think about Buckingham Palace or Versailles, they're so much larger. But I do think it's something that many administrations have been talking about. I know for sure that the Clinton administration had really recommended to the Bush administration that they consider putting some sort of permanent pavilion up because they really learned to have the numbers of people that they wanted to entertain. They were constantly having to do tents on the lawn. And so I do think that's been something that has been talked about for a long time.
We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of our country. Talk to us about what happened during the 200th celebration when Gerald Ford was president.
Well, that's a great example of one of the times when they might have loved a ballroom to have at the White House. But when President Ford, during that American Centennial, so many people, they had never had that many requests to come and take tours of the White House before. And that wasn't just from Americans and people around the world that wanted to come walk through the wonderful White House, but it was also heads of state that really wanted to come visit us. And Mrs. Ford was really sensitive to the fact that she didn't want the house to be shut down for tours, which you typically would have to do for the days leading up to these state dinners. So they were having many of their events out on the White House lawn in a tent so that the tours could continue to go through. And the other thing that I think is interesting about the Ford administration, you really do see this time in our history as, you know, so many things have been unfolding, and it is such a dangerous time for some of our leaders. Having the ability to have more events at the White House will allow, in many ways, people to have more access to the president, because after the Ford and Reagan assassination attempts, the Secret Service really did want to scale back how much the president was out and about with crowds.
You know, we see these images of the construction, and they've sparked some concern that this new ballroom is going to disturb the integrity of the White House, and they're potentially destroying a historical structure. How do you think former presidents and first ladies would feel about the construction of this new ballroom? You mentioned that presidents and first ladies have wanted more space to entertain, but when you see pictures like that, what do you think that how do you think they would feel?
You know, I think it would depend on which administration. Not all of them wanted the space. The Reagans famously had almost a state dinner a month, and they were able to keep it all in that state dining room at roughly 130 people. But I will say all presidents and first ladies on both sides of the aisle, one thing that really unites them is their ability to look to history to find comfort. And I know that a lot of people, need to remember the time of the Truman renovation. And we're so lucky that President Truman was president when the White House really was falling apart, and he completely restored it. But he also added the Truman balcony, and a lot of people were really upset about that. A lot of historical architects were calling to try to stop it. And now it's become part of our loved and cherished image of that White House. I can't imagine really what it would look like anymore. I've seen photos, but when you think of the White House, the Truman balcony is such a big part of it.
And you've been part of some of these grand parties that have been held at the White House. Can you speak to the importance of this type of soft diplomacy and the role that it plays when it comes to the president's office?
I do not think we can underestimate the importance of soft diplomacy enough. It really is, even if we don't always cover it, when you read newspapers overseas after these big historic visits, an invitation to the White House for a head of state is really an invitation saying you are in good standing with the United States. And people are completely poring over the details. I mean, it truly, sometimes I think other countries will have more media covering White House state visits than we do on the royals. I've had one person tell me that they were in the room during President Reagan's historic state visit with Russia, that you could literally feel the Cold War melt. And I thought that was such a great way of describing it, that so much more can be done in these meals and when people can get together and talk and exchange ideas, that it's just, you can't appreciate it enough.
Do you have a favorite memory of your days at the White House, planning all these big events?
Oh, yeah. I just think you cannot, every time you think of one, I was not part of the planning, but I did get to watch with the press President Trump's last state dinner for Australia during his first term. I thought was one of the most amazing moments in White House history. He had every branch of the United States government, United States military, represented on all of the angles of the Rose Garden. The state dinner was in the Rose Garden. The Marine Band was on top of the Oval Office. You had the Marines. Everyone was standing on roofs or in the bushes. And looking into the guests, you could see Henry Kissinger, and he had started crying and said it was one of the most powerful moments he had ever witnessed. And so when you think of somebody like Henry Kissinger that's been attending these events since the Nixon administration, to say that, it really brings to the forefront
Jennifer
how
Pickens.
special of an evening that was.
Oh, yes. And the pictures of all these events that are in your books are just remarkable.
It was the largest musical, I think it was the largest musical military performance at the White House, and it was just magical.
Wow. To be a witness to some of the things that you have been able to see in your career. Pretty cool. All right, Jennifer Pickens, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Thank you. You as well.